first of all, congratulations to everyone on your role. I will say my work in the fraternity led to so many things in my life, not the least of which is this position that I enjoy today. I'll tell you just a little bit about the Opry if some of you may or may not know even what the Grand Ole Opry is, but it is indeed a storied historic venue and show. We call ourselves the show that made country music famous. Came into play in 1925. And so we just celebrated our 95th anniversary, continue to actually, in this very, very crazy, crazy year. I've been here since, well, for just over 20 years. And the Opry's bread and butter has always been our ability to sell tickets to a live event. So we were at a place pre-COVID where we were nearing 1 million tickets sold per year to people from around the world. And it was really communication that has gotten us through this crazy and, from my standpoint, awful year. And on March 13th of last year, we made the really difficult decision to put a pause on live shows here at the Opry House, meaning a show with a live audience. So for the first time in my career here, and the first time in 8 decades, the Opry played on without a live audience. It actually paid incredible dividends in terms of communication, in that we didn't miss a single Saturday night broadcast of that radio show. The Opry is the world's longest running radio show. And that, in fact, parlayed into a lot of really great coverage that we hope will pay off in the future in terms of people still making plans to come visit the Opry. Really quickly, what we did on March 14th was we continued to have our radio show, but we also added a live stream with just hours to plan. And by the next Saturday night, March 21st, we had a live stream in play, had told everybody about it in terms of country music fans to watch. We had added a television component, and we're one of the only live entertainment pieces available, other than everybody remembers that era when everybody was live streaming from their home, etc. The Opry was one of the few entertainment venues to have a live event, and we really did hear from people around the world who were saying they were tuned in on Saturday nights. That led to, really quickly, a few highlights for us were over those Saturday night periods. We had appearances from folks like Garth Brooks and Trisha Yearwood and Carrie Underwood and Brad Paisley and Blake Shelton. Lots of folks came to visit, such that at the end of the year, Polestar, which is kind of the Bible of live entertainment publications, ranked the Opry as the #1 live streamer for all of 2020, which is the biggest piece for me is that the Opry has always had a legendary reputation, but it has always appealed to an older audience. We have younger folks that come to the show, but really it has always been, our median age has been about 55. So communication and our ability to live stream at the drop of a hat really turned that on a dime. And we have found in our research that the 25 to 35-year-old category shows the greatest interest now in coming to visit the Opry, which is a amazing feat for all of us on this end, and is all about the communication and the digital technology that we use to get the Opry out to the masses over the past year. So we'll take a look. What I want to do today is just show you, beginning with this next slide, basically pull back the curtain for you all in terms of what's important to us at the Opry in terms of communication. And then hopefully I'll have said something by the time we reach slide 6 or 7 that is applicable to you. I'm not going to attempt to, lay out on the line how I see it being applicable, because hopefully you'll be able to think of those parallels in your own worlds. But I'll tell you the most important things for us at the Opry in terms of social media are those 4 components there. The matter of social listening. People always immediately think about, what are we going to post? What is the content we're planning to share? And the most important aspect of digital communication for us is to be able to monitor what people are saying about us, how they're feeling. It was amazing, honestly, to me, that first Saturday night of the pandemic, when we put our show out there via a live stream for the first time ever, to watch people having found us in Australia, in London, people saying we set our alarm clock to watch this particular show, which was Vince Gill, Brad Paisley, and Marty Stewart. So it was stopping to see what is on people's minds rather than just putting something out there. And that leads to the next piece, which is engaging with the audience, not just reading what people are sharing, but responding to them and taking stock of what people are saying and understanding if and how we need to react to that. The next, of course, is community management, assisting with customer service. We had, I think I first really began to understand the power of digital communication in 2010. The Opry House flooded in a really, it was a 500-year flood here in Nashville. And our phone systems were down, our ticketing system was down, and we used social media to basically tell everybody everything we wanted them to know, and updating our websites. And I'll tell you, I understood the power of social media then when we had to move from this current venue to other venues, and we would tell people we're moving to, say, to Tennessee Performing Arts Center, and we would post that. It was interesting in terms of community management that fans were kind of doing our customer service work for us when we were sharing the right things. For instance, if you had a ticket, a front row seat at the Opry House, you might not have had a front row seat at TPAC, just because it's a different venue. And it was interesting to see people engaging with each other and kind of helping each other through the process and saying, well, think about it. The Opry House seats this many people, TPAC seats this many people. You're not going to have your front row seat. They're dealing with a flood and doing the best they can. So it was interesting to see those communities come together via social media. And the other component I would say that is important for the Opry is that we're always working, and I think that this is one of the key components for anyone in digital communication. We're always working to keep things fresh, to determine what it is we can do that makes some news, that keeps people excited about coming back and taking a look at what we have to offer. The next important piece, which I think is obvious, is to have a well-conceived plan, which is on the next slide here, the the most important thing I would say about having your plan is to have it, but to be ready to jump in and change it when need be. And whenever someone hears, "Oh, we're going to change this plan," I think we all immediately assume it's because something's gone wrong. But I would also advocate that you're ready to change your plan when something goes right. Social media and digital communication can be all about taking advantage of seizing an opportunity that you didn't even see was there. Um, I'm fairly certain, although I'm not completely certain, that Bernie Sanders last week did not don those mittens because he wanted to become a social media icon, but he and others like him were ready to jump on and see that's happening, and we're ready to change our plan to post Bernie sitting in the Opry circle with Blake Shelton and Brad Paisley, even though we had something else planned for that day. I'll tell you, you can plan these things until you're blue in the face and work to have an incredible promotion that you think will drive great engagement, that will drive new likes and new followers. But then so often it comes down to something simple like an old man from Vermont wearing mittens to an inauguration. In our case, Dolly Parton celebrated her birthday. She, of course, is a worldwide icon, but we posted a photo of Dolly Parton singing her all-time classic, "I Will Always Love You," and wrote, "Dolly will always love you, happy birthday." And it's somewhat maddening, but that got more likes and more engagement than anything we had planned all year. And you roll with it. Like the minute you see something hitting, you're ready to jump in and do something else along those lines. In terms of plans and just being able to be as flexible as possible, you see there that post from us on March 12th of last year was really us being completely honest with our audience and saying, "Hey, we're really not sure, any more certain than you are, what we're in for, but we're here to tell you that we're studying the situation. We want every Opry fan to be safe and healthy, and we're going to let you know as soon as we can what our plans are." We then let people know, and I'll tell you, we weren't certain what the future had in store for us on March 12th, but on the next day, we actually canceled shows here at the Opry through April of last year. And then, of course, as things continued, we we paused shows for even a longer period of time, and actually just came back with shows in October of last year. And then the other piece is showing you really can also make a plan, and sometimes you stick with it, such as Keith Urban called us up in May and wanted to come play the show. And we worked with him to post a video about how excited he was to play. We worked with his management and said, let's post this at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. And we did just that, and generated, I think it was 4 million people tuned into that show. So moving on, just to show you a few other examples of what we've done over the past year. Before I answer any questions you might have, we can take a look at, these are just some examples of how we've communicated over the past year, even amid this horrific pandemic. We've tried really to build a community of country music fans and just music fans in general, even without our ability to sell a ticket to those folks up until October. And we're still at minimum capacity just to keep people safe. So the first piece you see there is our early days of telling people, hey, our ticketed shows are canceled, but you can tune in, and we built an audience of millions there. And the next one is just an example of the nostalgia of saying we had no idea what we were in for. Lauren Elena in that photo was playing for thousands of people just a few weeks ago, and now she's playing for millions of people, just no one in the Opry House. The next is taking a look back at Opry history. And then the fourth there is kind of bringing people in the best way we can when they're not available, they're not safe in the Opry House to showcase the music that we are playing in the Opry House. A couple of other key points, and then I'd be glad to answer questions for you. One is on the next slide and I'm sure this is obvious to you, but to cater to the audience that you might have on any particular platform. For the Opry, we're far more conversational and kind of have a more fun tone on Twitter, and it's more in the moment. Instagram, we're obviously using photos and video to convey our message. And Facebook is where, for the most part, we go to share actual information, important information and updates with our audience, and look for the most engagement in terms of answering questions and that sort of thing. Couple of other key points I would say for us at the Opry is on the next slide to maximize two-way communication, to really spend time not just thinking about what it is we want to say to someone, but to say to the world, but what we want to say to others, because they're going to share that information as well. A couple of other key pieces in these last few slides are really that Opry has found a way to create its brand presence online. And I say that from someone with a couple of decades of experience now at the Opry. When I started here, it was really difficult to change people's perceptions of our show. It was thought of, and I mean, I love the Opry and I loved it when I came here because I'm a country music fan. But when I came here, it really was thought of as an older show where maybe, artists who had top hits a decade or two earlier came to play. People had great respect for it, but it was also thought of as, maybe not like as hip as a concert or what have you. And digital communication has really changed the way we can tell folks who we are. We had Blake Shelton and Brad Paisley here last week, and social media let us tell everyone immediately that was happening. And, Brad and Blake were able to tell their fans that was happening as well. So I would say, even though I said wasn't going to relate this necessarily to you and what you do, would say that my parallel between the Opry and what you all are doing is knowing that, while the Opry works with all these different artists, you're also working with everyone on your campuses, et cetera. And those people can be your advocates for what you're trying to accomplish, just as we have these artists who are helping us accomplish what we would like to accomplish as well. And I'll say that just in terms of communication, this past year has been an absolutely crazy one, but another benefit has been that because we've had these Saturday night shows and our shows have continued interrupted, we were able to amass some really great PR hits. We were on the CBS Evening News as just an example of an American entity that was trudging on through the pandemic. Several times the Today Show picked up on footage of our Saturday night shows and talked about what was happening what have been happening on Saturday nights, on Monday mornings. And the thought I would leave you with, other than answering questions for you, is the thing that I've really taken from this pandemic, and that I think is just a good life lesson for me, is that success breeds success. And what I mean by that is, you know, we could have taken this pandemic and just had a radio show that a few thousand people would have listened to, but we made the decision on a Saturday, after having canceled shows on Friday, to live stream that show. And that live stream got picked up by lots of people tuned in. Before you knew it, artists like Garth Brooks realized what we were doing and were calling to say, we want to be a part of this. Those folks were seen on Saturday nights. So then people in important roles around the country in television were seeing what we were doing and were calling me saying, we need talent and we need content for like our 4th of July special. Can you film Brad Paisley on Saturday night after you're done? Can you film him, get us that content for us to put on a 4th of July special, the Rose Bowl parade, etc. So my point is that by kind of sticking your neck out and doing one thing and getting it done well and successfully can lead to success in all those other areas as well. So those are my thoughts on communication in the Opry. I know it was quick, but I hope it was somewhat interesting, and maybe you did take something from it. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, everyone. If you have questions, you can type them into the chat or raise your hand or request yourself to unmute, and we'll have you ask them straight to Dan. Think about things as they relate to SIGEP. Think about things as they relate to your role, and even as they relate to if you're interested in a future career in communications, that's a-okay to ask too. I'll get us started, but please fill the chat with questions, guys. Dan, you mentioned that you really had to change people's perceptions of the Opry, and that your most interested audience is growing is now younger people, as opposed to, you had said it previously was older people. I know, we'll talk about this in our debrief, guys, but like when you Google fraternity, the news isn't great always. And we often find ourselves in a position of changing perceptions. What are some of the top things that your team looks at when it's either tapping into new audiences or trying to change perceptions? What is your advice around that?
One would be to look at all the different vehicles you can use to share your message, to share your communication. Really, the thing that changed the perception for us was we moved from just being a live event and a radio show on AM radio. And I would venture to guess, looking at the age of the folks on the screen, many of you probably didn't even know there was AM radio or have never listened to AM radio. So it would stand to reason that you would think the Opry might not be the first thing you thought of. But by making that move in March to a live stream, it was such that people could share with the world what they were doing on that Saturday night, and people could tune in easily. Carrie Underwood, when she was on in September, could tell the world, I'm going to be on, and click here to watch. So the biggest thing I would think of is the vehicle by which you're sharing that information. And working, as we said, success breeds success, to determine some things that you can do that will drive a better perception of the fraternity, and then getting that word out to as many people as you can through those vehicles.
We have one from Anish at Arkansas Alpha. With social media, what are some of the ways that you can grow an authentic following?
Well, I think anything you do with just different um, personalities related to your brands, which your brands would obviously be different chapters, but the folks who are members of those chapters or with whom you have special connections, that's the first thing I think of. In that social media changed the way the Opry operates and the way we do business, because it was our first chance to make Blake Shelton fans, make Carrie Underwood fans, make Garth Brooks fans, fans of the Grand Ole Opry as well. So in my mind, like someone who, a parent of a chapter member or a chapter member or someone with whom folks at your chapters have a unique relationship. Yes, they don't have a million fans like Blake Shelton does, but they do have followers along the way. Utilize them to do something fun with them, like honor everybody's moms on Mother's Day and showcase those photos and just share, their favorite song, their favorite food, and the what everybody most wants them to make in a care package. Fun things like that that broaden who you're talking to.
Love that. Your followers. We have one from Austin at Mississippi State. He says, obviously, the Opry is already a large and recognizable brand. What advice would you give about growing a chapter's presence or brand? And Mississippi State is one of our newer chapters. So it's a great question from a group trying to grow their presence on campus.
And I'll say the Opry is obviously a well-known entity, but we really started in social communication or social media like everyone else. I remember when our goal was to hit 100,000 Facebook followers by the end of a year, probably 10 years ago now. So we're really not that different. But I would think that it does go back to your followers, like utilizing everybody you have to grow there, and then just being authentic. I mean, asking yourselves what would you want to see? What would engage you? Think about your own behaviors, and whatever you're clicking on, whatever you're liking and sharing, just think about how you can try to do that within your chapter. I mean, some of the greatest successes we've had and I've had professionally is just because I was driving down the road and thought that's an interesting outdoor board, or somebody said something interesting in a podcast and I thought, how can we mimic that? Like what is our parallel to that, and running with it.
Where do you get inspiration from? So you mentioned the Bernie meme, you mentioned those sorts of things you're talking about. Like, where does you and your team draw that like creative inspiration from?
Well, fortunately, we're in an environment and a product where the inspiration sometimes comes from the product itself. There's nothing like a Saturday night to, after you've been working all week on something, to go out and see it happening, or to sit in this office. The Opry stage is just outside that door and to the right, but to sit in here and know that someone's playing out there, and you're just and you're reading what people from around the world are saying about what's happening out there. But it's podcasts, it's scrolling through and seeing what people are talking about here, and thinking about how we what we do, what we can do that fits there. And it's about having a good group of people who are doing the same things we are, checking in and just seeing, like you all are really hearing from contemporaries about what's working for them, what isn't working for them. I think that can't be, you can never value that enough. Just a meeting over coffee or what have you to talk it through.
Love that. We'll be doing a lot of that together on these sessions, so I appreciate that plug there. Let's see, and then I think we'll take this one more from Daniel at South Florida. What are the most important skills that these brothers can develop as VP comms to take into the future?
That is a great question. Um, I think one there's so many, and I will tell you, I really do value the time that I spent in the college fraternity, um, practicing all of these pieces. One I would say is the value of listening as a communicator, really stopping what you're doing and hearing someone out and thinking through how you problem solve with that person. Couple of others, nonverbal communication, like setting yourselves up for success just in the way, your meeting, if it's digitally or in person or what have you. Um, and I think the value of a long-term plan that has, with the knowledge that you'll probably need to make many changes as you go through. There's so many. I mean, um, I'll tell you, I do think that y'all have the best. You made the great decision um, to be in this communication role, because I really do feel like communication roles are uh, in an undergraduate setting are so important, in that even if you don't go into a communication profession, having this year of work under your belt is incredibly valuable, no matter where you are. I mean, I swear I'm in meetings and just digital meetings today where I swear you can tell when someone has had kind of a role like you all have, and then the people who haven't. And I've been at it for a couple of decades now, and it's just obvious when being methodical and really thinking through the best way to communicate something and the best way to listen to someone is important to someone, and when it's not.
Huge. Hopefully that is inspiring for all the guys on the call. Thank you so much, Dan, for sharing your experience with us and your examples with us. We're, I think, excited to start into the next part. So we so appreciate you.
You betcha. And I'll tell you, I do think it's a great it's a great career. And if anybody out there is interested in a career in music or at the Opry or what have you, feel free to reach out. It's a great place to be, and Nashville is a great place to be. So if I can help in any way, as I said, feel free to reach out. Thank you all.